Could the government's visa freeze finally tip the scales for trucking? On this episode of Driven Too Far, we're going to dig in to see what's going on with the driver visas. Hello, I'm Andrew Winkler with Chief Carriers, and this is Driven Too Far, the truth about trucking, a podcast that helps over-the-road truck drivers balance career and family. Hey, welcome back to Driven Too Far. On today's episode, we have got some controversy brewing out of Washington, D.C. So if you're not familiar with what's going on the 21st of this month, Secretary of State Marco Rubio put a pause on issuing visas to foreign truck drivers coming into the U.S. And that really stems from an accident that happened earlier this month down in Florida. You've probably seen it on social media. It's all over the place. Unfortunately, a driver tried to make a U-turn in the middle of the Florida interstate. And when he did that, a minivan slammed into the side of his trailer and killed 3 people. What they found out was that driver was not from the U.S. and he does not proficiently speak the English language, and he may not understand U.S. road signs. So he's been arrested, and it sounds like the state attorney in Florida intends to prosecute him as well for the wrongful death of those 3 people in the car. So this has been going on for a while. As soon as Trump got in, the administration, obviously they're making some changes from the previous administration. And one of the things that's being questioned is who's watching the foreign truck drivers that are allowed into the country. Now, some of them are coming in the right way. They've got work visas issued to them, and they're allowed to come into the country and work that way. But what they're finding out is with the amount of accidents that are turning up on the interstate, more and more they're finding that these foreigners are coming in. They don't speak the English language sufficient enough to understand road signs. One of the things the Trump administration recently did as well was they are making sure that these people can speak English. So there's been roadside inspections. The state enforcement is out there. Some of them are even at the scales now, making sure the drivers can fluently speak the English language and they're able to operate their vehicles in a safe manner up and down the interstates for us. So to be honest with you, this whole thing's kind of a mess, and they're uncovering more and more what's going on. The challenge is that your CDL is a federal license, basically, but the states are the ones that issue the license. And what they're getting figured out is nobody's actually been tracking this stuff. So while some states are a little more easy and issue those CDLs to foreign-based drivers, nobody's tracking it. And there's some rules behind those that need to go on. So for instance, if you come in to the U.S. on a proper visa, you're technically supposed to, within 30 days, take your non-domiciled CDL, meaning it was issued in a foreign country, and you've got 30 days to figure out where your place of residency is going to be. Maybe that's the carrier you go to work for in the U.S., and then within 30 days, you should switch that over to a U.S.-based CDL. Now, if and when you do that, obviously, by taking those tests in that state, they would figure out whether or not you could speak English, whether or not you could read the road signs on the test, etc. But what's happening is those workers are coming in and they're never taking the state tests. They just continue to work on their non-domiciled CDL, and there's no process really for catching that. So very few of them actually get caught. You know, maybe one of the ways they get caught is through a state scale, or somebody pulls in a scale and the officer actually pulls you in for an inspection and then can catch it on your CDL. The CDL would actually say under it non-domiciled. So I've been watching this stuff for a while, and I probably have some bigger questions, I guess. You know, how deep does this run? How many foreign drivers are actually operating in the U.S. Illegally? And nobody knows, and that's part of the problem. We don't know if that's a larger problem. Maybe it's just a small percentage. But when nobody tracks it, you don't know what people are getting away with. And from my point of view, as a leader in a trucking operation, you know, this has been a tough 2-3 years on most organizations in the transportation business. The rates are depressed. They haven't moved. There's too much capacity. in the industry. And then a guy has to start to wonder, are these illegals coming in and are they contributing to the capacity issue and maybe the low rate issues that we've been struggling with for the past 2 years? Again, nobody's tracking it, so you don't really know how deep it goes. But geez, in my mind, it certainly could be a big part of the problem. If you've got carriers or drivers coming in operating in the U.S. And they do so, and they don't demand or support higher rates, they're willing to work for whatever, then that would be an explanation of why the rates have stayed so low so long and why we're over capacity with trucks in the US. There's too many trucks available, and that's why the rates have stayed low. Now, one thing I want to cover is the agreement between Canada and Mexico. So if you're an international carrier based in Mexico, you are allowed to come into the U.S. That driver would be allowed to come into the U.S. They're supposed to make their drops in the U.S. It's okay for them to get a reload, but they have to go directly back out of the United States. So they're not allowed to come in and then move freight within the borders of the U.S. And that's another question mark that's happening, is if nobody's watching this, are these carriers, these international carriers coming in and staying longer than they should? Are they adding capacity to the issue as well? And I think that's certainly a possibility. So what does all this mean for our industry? If the State Department continues to put that pause or hold off on issuing visas, what could that do to our industry as a whole? So one of the things it could do is, if there are too many drivers operating illegally in the U.S., it could certainly have an impact on the capacity. So if the capacity starts to shrink in the U.S. because we've stopped this flow of immigrant drivers coming in that shouldn't be here, aren't working here legally, that could actually help the capacity issue, right? We wouldn't be over capacity anymore. The balance between the freight and the number of trucks we need becomes more in line or balanced. And then that's when rates will start to shift. One of the things I see out there on your social posts and everything else is like, everybody's like, wow, when are these rates going to change? And nobody really has a good explanation of why the rates have stayed depressed for so long. But this could certainly be an answer to that. Now, on the flip side of that, let's say they continue with the pause on the visas and stuff. It could really flip the industry. And all of a sudden, if the economy picks up and there is more freight, especially as we come into peak shipping season here before the holidays, all of a sudden there's not enough drivers. Yes, it'll drive the rates up, but at the same time, if you remember kind of pandemic time several years ago, we weren't sure when the shelves were going to get stocked. We weren't sure if you ordered things for Christmas when you were going to get them. Type thing. So it could recreate a situation like that as well. So there's both pros and cons to it. But I think from my point of view, more than anything, is I have nothing against immigrant workers coming in as long as they're doing it correctly and legally. And that's really what I would like to see out of the situation, is like, hey, I have no problem with it. Just make sure that when you come in, you're doing it right. You've got the proper visa. You can speak English sufficiently enough to operate that commercial motor vehicle in the U.S., and that you can also read the road signs, obviously, from a safety perspective. We can't have people running up and down the interstate that don't understand what the road signs mean, and ultimately causing accidents and fatalities. And I think that's what the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, is really trying to do, is he's trying to make sure that these things aren't contributing to the safety issues that are out on the roadway. So the bottom line, probably one of the biggest shakeups we've seen in the trucking industry for a while. It feels a little dirty to me. I hope they get to the bottom of it soon, but I think we've also created our own problem in the U.S. with each state kind of, issuing licenses as they will. There's no tracking and tracing system. So whatever they do with whatever the current administration does, is I hope they get a hold of this, get a handle on it, and make sure there's vetting and tracking, clearinghouses, whatever that takes, to make sure that this stuff doesn't happen again in the future. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Driven Too Far. If you're interested in exploring a career in trucking, check us out at chiefcarriers.com or check the show notes.